All right, y'all. So today we're going to go through how to make curtains coming from Maya. However, the workflow is going to be the exact same as if you were in Blender, over to Substance Painter, and ideally we'll kick it out into Unity and take a look over there. So let's get started. So the reference for what I'm trying to do here is none other than the Last of Us UI. So theoretically, I may create a tutorial on how to create this UI one for one. After I did the lighting tutorial with the volumetric God rays coming in through the window, I had one student that mentioned that it reminded them of this, so I figured why not drive in this direction. So let's go ahead and jump into Maya. We'll start out with the modeling, the UV unwrapping, then we'll go over into Substance Painter, maybe with a bit of Photoshop in between. I'll see you all over there. All right, so the first thing is going to be making a plane. And in this plane, we want to have it rotated up exactly at 90. We have on our non-two-sided lighting, so in Maya you can tell that we're looking at the correct side. And then let's scale this up and try to do something comparable. Something like this maybe. If we're trying to emulate curtains like that, I think that's about the right height. And now here is the trick, is I'm going to duplicate this, move this over, and it's not the most efficient use of UV space, but this is how I'm going to operate, is I'm going to come in here from the side, zoom in, and I'm going to UV unwrap it now from the camera. And theoretically, I suppose I can just merge the meshes. So I'm going to mesh combine, and then let's do a UV camera based. And now if I go into the UV editor, we have them both here, which is perfect. A little bit of dead space in the center, but I'm good with it. And now the main thing is that we are not going to re-UV this at any other step so that we can paint directly on the flat UVs, even though we're going to turn these into something that is a lot more wavy, so on and so forth. All right, and then I'll pull this forward. So I'm going to do the same over here. Yes, I could have done this before duplicating, but I'm just gonna, maybe I'll do this one the other way so that they have a bit of uniqueness. Then what I want to do is go to F8, Mesh, Smooth. And I think I'm just gonna run one smooth on this. Maybe even condense that in a little bit. I think that's looking in line with what I'm trying to hit here. And now the fun part is going into Vertex Select and starting to give this all a bit of life. So I'm going to start out with a couple of larger movements. Something like that. And then we can come back in with some smaller movements. So all I'm doing is changing the amount of soft select. Let's see, we want it to look natural, and we know that the window is going to be in the center, so maybe I'll pull this out just a bit. I think I just want to take this up more, maybe to 2. There we go. Pull the bottom out. And let's do the same here. And honestly, I don't love this edge. So I'm going to bring that over here, come back into Modeling Toolkit, turn off Soft Select, and I'm just going to pull that this way. Maybe even something like that. Could be interesting. And now I want to pull all of my vertices forward so that they're roughly aligned. They don't have to be perfectly. And let me grab one or two of these things and kind of move them laterally just a little bit. Looks a bit more natural. I'm happy with that. So I think that's good enough. The nice thing is when we go back into the UV editor, there's still nice, clean, flat UVs. So now I'm going to export selection. We're going to call this curtain V2 since I was playing with one earlier. And now I want to open up Substance Painter. Okay, so while Painter is launching, I want to grab a picture that I found. So here's a tiling lace material. I just found that online randomly. So there are basically two ways that you can approach this at this point. I know that my UV is going to be 1 by 1 since it's a 0 to 1 UV space. So I'm going to crop that there. And what I can do is just manually tile this over. And it's going to make this super easy for me. It looks, there we go. That's how we want to do this. So actually, these two on the right are more properly tiled. That's interesting. So it wasn't actually tiled right at the beginning. And the nice thing is, since I know that I have dead space in the center, I'm just going to do it like this, and we'll see how this goes. So now let's grab all of these. And I guess to get back to my point, the way that you would do this in Substance Painter is that you could just use this as a mask that you apply to a brush that you could then paint on and have the correct amount of spacing between each brush stroke that it all matches up. I'm just faster in Photoshop to do it this way instead. So in doing it this way, I'm going to go into Painter and just apply all of this at once rather than each tile individually being painted. So that's how I'm going to do this. Let me see what I got here. Okay. It looked like there was a weird overlapping issue. Okay, I feel like I'm happy enough with that now I can come off. Okay, this isn't perfect. It's good enough. Basically, I just wanted to create a texture that will be tiling. I'm going to export. I really don't care if it's a PNG or a JPEG for the sake of what I'm doing. So let's say lace mask. And now I want to go over into Painter, close, File, New, Select, Curtain V2, FBX. We'll leave it at 2K for now. And there are a couple very important steps here. The first one is we want to paint actual transparency because in our reference image that we've been looking at, the curtain is definitely see-through. Like this is genuine lace curtain. So what I want to do is come up into my shader settings and change PBR Metal Rough to PBR Metal Rough with alpha blending. Now that I've done that, I can come into my texture set. I can hit plus and I can add in opacity. And now when I come back in here, I can create a fill layer, turn on opacity. And now if I crank opacity down, after I make sure I actually have it on, I can control the opacity of everything that I'm looking at. So I'm going to turn this down a good amount. And then what I want to do is create a paint layer. Actually, yeah, I think I want to do a paint layer, and I'm just going to use this as a stencil. So now I can file, import resources, add resources, come into lace mask, hit OK, import, cancel because we didn't define it. We want this to be an alpha. And now that this is in here as an alpha, I can theoretically just drag this over to the stencil And then I can zoom in as much as I choose. And I think I'm happy with that. So now I want to make sure I have opacity. I have it turned way up. And to be honest, in looking at this now, I have this inverted. So let me do one thing of combining all of these. So let's select them all, merge layers, and then hit Control I. And now white is going to show through, which is what we wanted. So the white will be the lace that is actually visible. So let's export as PNG, come back into this, overwrite lace mask, come into Painter, import resource, add resource, lace mask, open, undefined, change to alpha, import. Now theoretically, if I pull this over into the stencil here, it's now flipped, which is what we want. So now I'm going to come in here and with painting opacity at full, I'm going to, at least for right now, just use a standard brush and come in here and paint. And the cool thing is, because I left my UVs flat, we're going to be in a good spot for me to not have a bunch of warping. But since I modified and smoothed all of this after I UV unwrapped, so let's find out if that worked for us or not. So now I'm going to unselect, come back over to here, and I think that's looking pretty damn good. So now even from the side, that looks correct to me. However, it's just solid white, which we don't really love. So let's come in here, do a new, I guess actually I want to do a fill, don't I? But I want the fill to not have opacity on. And then I can come into my materials, take off the search for alpha, find something like a cotton. Let's see what we have here. Let's try this. Something like that looks pretty good. I may want to untint this just a little bit. There we go. Here's our base color. Let's turn that just a little bit more white, but still want it to be faded. Maybe even go a little bit more towards yellow, since this is meant to be old. All right, and now what we want to do is something very simple, which is right-click on our layer with the lace, do add black mask. And on this black mask, I'm going to come in here and just paint in white to get a bunch of this back. And I suppose we can just do this here. And I'm leaving the bottom not painted in because we want to add in the tears that we see here on the bottom of this image. So to do that, I want to grab the alpha for the shape of my brush and grab, like, here's drips. That might look kind of cool. I'm just going to scroll through here really quickly and see what we got. So let's start with drips and we'll see what comes after that. Something like this, perhaps. How's that looking? So one thing that we're going to do is come back to this fill layer and pull the opacity all the way down. Now that's looking pretty good. Looks like that must be a lighting artifact in Substance Painter, I hope. So now the question is, does this look good enough? I think knowing that I'm going to be looking at it from this angle, I want to paint some of these drips a bit more from this angle. So let me do that. I think that one's probably a bit too... Something like that's kind of nice. I guess before we export entirely, I do want to just add some weathering. And maybe to do that, I want to come in here and add in a new paint layer. Change the alpha to something else of interest. Something like that looks pretty good. Take out the opacity because we don't want to paint in opacity where we've cut it out previously. And for the color, we can do that one and take it even further yellow. Honestly, that's too yellow. Let's go into dirt. Oh yeah, I'm digging that quite a lot. So just trying to paint in dirt in a regularly organic fashion. Probably less at the top and more at the bottom. The other thing that I don't love about this is this plane right here facing me. So I feel like I want to come back into this and maybe with an alpha try to take out the opacity here. Now the key is that this can't look like it's awkward and floating. So I do need to come back in here at some point with a hard edge brush and paint back in some of this stuff. And I think that's going to be achievable. I'm thinking here we may just come back into this and use that same exact thing. Let's do drip. There we go. I think that's better. So all that I ended up doing was changing the angle here as I'm painting back in this edge. Something like that. And let's come over here and do it to the other. There we go. That looks a bit more tattered, how I would expect for this type of lace to weather. Where at the edges it's just fraying to all hell. I think that's pretty damn cool. Something like that. All right, so I'm pretty happy with that. Let's come in here and maybe do one more color layer. So if I come over and do, let's just find something else that kind of looks splotchy. Deep drop splatter. All right. Come down here, make sure opacity's off, turn this down to like a brown. Gonna come in here and paint this a bit. I feel like that's starting to look pretty good tattered. And maybe here, let me do a white mask and erase out some towards the inside so that it's kind of sun bleached a little bit. I think I'm pretty happy with that. We'll roll with that and see what we get. So now what we want to do is go to File, Export Textures. Ensure that we're in the output template for Unity HDRP Metallic Standard, which already packs your alpha into the alpha channel of your diffuse map. And we'll also pack your metallic AO and glossiness into one mask map for you. All that looks great. I'm going to change the export to this same spot. Going to go ahead and hit export. And now I want to come over here and open up our last project and see how this goes. So I'm going to open that. See y'all in a sec. And in a pretty good spot now. Okay, so now I want to bring in that model that we just did. So let's pull in the FBX. And I'll move this over into models just so that we're staying clean. And I want to grab these three textures, create a new material, create, where are you material? There you are. Call this curtain. I'm going to lock this in the inspector, go over to my textures and grab my three textures. So curtain's going to base, curtain mask is going to mask, and curtain normal will go to normal. And then we just want to make sure that we have turned the curtain normal into a normal map here and applied that change. And then we can go into our models, pull the curtain out. Not bad, not bad. Cool. So this is looking not bad. Scale it up just a little bit so that you can still get a good amount of that window. And so that when we go into the main camera, kind of goes above what we're looking at, which is similar to our reference. The curtains go way up above. At least for now. We'll see how this looks. Then we want to come over to materials, grab curtain, and actually we'll see because this came in as a prefab. Let me come back to models, select it, go to materials, and actually we can just do that. So I'm going to take this material and drag it onto this default that it had. Apply. Can't really see much going on yet, but we will very quickly see something pretty kick-ass. So we want the curtain to go to static, and then we want the material to go to double-sided. Something cool is happening. Want to change opaque to transparent. It's looking pretty all right. Pull this in and down just a bit. I may even scale this in this way. Okay, only needs to work from this angle. I dig that. This is working quite well. So now I want to bake my lighting and let's see what happens. All right, so now we have it baked. I think that's starting to look pretty cool. So if I go back into the game, it's a little bit zoomed out. So let's go back into our reference. We're right up against the window. So let's just see what happens if we take the main camera and scoot that in a good deal. And let's see where our particles are at. Turn back on the particles. I'll probably slide that further in front of the camera. And let's hit play and see what we got. Really not bad. Not bad at all. I'm going to scoot it in a little bit more, bring the scale down. I just want to make this look as good for the camera as I can. That's not bad to see how tattered it is. If I pull down, just a little bit, I think that's looking pretty cool. Let's bake lighting again. Okay, so it just finished baking. I see a bit more aliasing now that we have that wild stuff going on here. Turn the anti-flickering way up. Okay, I'm good with that for right this moment. Control S to save it out. Let's hit play and see what we got. Only thing I might do, see if I regret it, is grab another curtain. And from the game view, see if that makes this look better or worse. I'm thinking that might give some more depth to all of this. So let's bake light again and see what that looks like. All right, so our light bake is done. I do think that that helps. See if we turn it off what the difference is. Yeah, I think that just gives it a bit more volume, makes it look a bit more real. So I'm going to leave that. I think as far as the scene goes, I'm pretty happy with this. I think it's a bit more dark. Like this is a bit more white and moody, ethereal. What's the word there I'm looking for? But I think for the time being that will be okay. What we'll likely do in a future tutorial is do some vines, and then I can very easily get a UI running off to the side. Anyways, thanks for tuning in. What we walked through in this is modeling curtains in Maya, exporting that into actually Photoshop first, and then taking that mask from Photoshop out into Substance Painter and painting on the model. And then we took it from Substance Painter with all the different layers, with the opacity added, etc., exported that into Unity, and this is where we got to. So let me know what y'all want to see next, and thank you for watching. Have a great day. Like, comment, and subscribe. See ya.